Hello, and welcome back to the studio. I'm Dr. Wiggo, and today we're going to talk about the greatest game I've ever played. Seriously, this game is unbelievably good. Here, let me show you the Metacritic score, or let me scroll some Metacritic reviews that they built that score off of. Yeah, everybody loves it. One of the highest rated games of all time. Why? Because it's Final Fantasy meets Dark Souls. Two phenomenal franchises that people adore, and this game is kind of both at the same time. It's a role-playing game, but it's not a JRPG because it's not Japanese. It's French. It's an FRPG. And it's a turn-based game, which, the Dark Souls people go, oh, well, then it's no good. But wait. When they attack you on their turn, you have dodge and parry, and it's just as hard as Dark Souls. Yeah, I died a lot. So what I'm going to do, as always, is start with a story. Except this time it's not a story about me. It's a story about the development of this game, because the story of how it came to be is almost as amazing as the game itself. Then I'll run through some stuff about the story, the art direction, the voice cast, the gameplay. Oh, you're going to love this. And then we'll end up with my review, which you kind of already heard, but I'll go into a little more detail than that. Let's start with the story of the development. So once upon a time, there was this French software developer named Guillaume Broche, who worked at Ubisoft, and he dreamed of making a Final Fantasy-like game. Well, during the pandemic, everybody got sent home, and so he was sitting around doing his work from home and started playing around, noodling around with this game. And he came up with a pretty good idea. By the way, not this idea. It was a different game. But then he went out and used Reddit to find other developers, plus he got some of his friends from Ubisoft, to put together a demo of this new game he was trying to design that was like Final Fantasy-like. And after they put together the demo, he got funding from the publisher Kepler Interactive, who's published a lot of cool games. And now they're like the greatest publisher of all time, as far as I'm concerned. So after he got the funding, he left Ubisoft and formed Sandfall Interactive, which is the studio that created this game, in Montpellier, France, down near the Mediterranean. So he's a coastal Frenchman. And now for the amazing part. A core of 30 developers. 30. I saw a recent interview, and I think they're up to 33. I think they just hired 3 so it would match the game. Including 12 from Ubisoft. So the guys that helped him with the demo, I guess some of them stayed on, but so they started working on this game. And they used Unreal Engine 5, which is like what a lot of the AAA games are written in and developed in. And so it looks like a AAA game, even though it's from this little tiny studio of 30 people. And this is where it gets a little weird. One of the volunteers who did the voice acting for his demo was a writer, and they had some conversations while they were recording her dialogue, and the next thing you know, she's the lead writer on this game. Part of the game comes from things he was working on before the previous demo that not at all like this game. And then part of it was from a dream she had. And there's a great interview with her on YouTube, I'll link it down below, where she describes how the story came about and how they interviewed like his mother, I think, or grandmother, and asked her questions, and it's a fascinating story. So she became the lead writer, and then but they needed a composer, they needed music. Oh, the music in this game is phenomenal. And they found the composer, Laurent, I'm sure I'm butchering all these French names, Laurent Testard on SoundCloud. And got in touch, and he went, I'll give it a shot. He'd never scored a game before. He was a composer they found. They liked the way his music sounded, thought it kind of fit with what they wanted the game to be, and the rest is history. So let's talk about the story of this game. So it starts in Paris, which you should be looking at now, but it's not Paris. Something bad happened. I mean, look at the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe, and there's some weird stuff going on here already, right at the very beginning of the game. And it turns out we're not in Paris, we're in a city called Lumiere. Of course, Lumiere means light, and Paris is the city of lights, so And this is where it gets really cool because there are no lore dumps. No one ever sits down and says, well, this is what happened and this is how this did. No one ever explains anything. You figure it out from interactions with the NPCs and with the other characters. And later on, you find expedition journals from previous expeditions. This is 33. There were others. And from those, you start piecing together what's going on. And what's going on is really astonishing. No spoilers in this video. Everything I show you on the screen or talk about will basically be in the prologue, just setting up the game. So the prologue starts off and you meet Gustav, and then Mael, and then a little later you meet Sophie.
What, the flower or Sophie?
Ooh, dark. Sophie would approve.
And they keep talking about there's some festival and something's going on and there's an expedition getting ready to go, but you don't know what the expedition's for. And then you start talking to people and apparently something really bad's about to happen. And you keep going and something really bad happens. Won't tell you what it is. So after the thing happens, which, by the way, they all knew about, and you pick up in the dialogue with the NPCs, you figure out, well, you don't figure out what's going to happen. You figure out something's going to happen, and it kind of seems like it's going to be final for some people, and you don't know. Well, after all that, finally the expedition sets out. Expedition 33, and it's a phenomenal thing, and the music swells, and all this stuff. And then the expedition gets to the continent because apparently Lumiere, during the fracture that they talk about, got thrown off of the continent and landed on an island out in the ocean now. And the boat arrives on the continent and really bad things happen. I mean, some terrible things. This game just pulls the rug out from you time and time and time again, and it starts at the very beginning. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Play the game. You gotta play this game. And by the way, if you have an Xbox, it's on Game Pass. You don't even have to buy it. You can play it for free. Oh, and it's only $50 if you do buy it. And you can find it on sale places. So yeah, you got no excuse. It's on Steam, it's everywhere. So after the really bad stuff happens when the boat lands, the first dungeon kind of sets up the story. And eventually you get out of that first dungeon. They're not dungeons, they're areas. For our purposes, for RPGs, they're dungeons. You emerge into the open world. And this is an open world like you've never seen before, or maybe you have. Well, here, look, this is what it looks like. Now, it's open world, but it's not open world. They direct you with game mechanics. Like in Act 1, you can't cross water because your boat got destroyed when you landed on the continent. That's part of the bad thing to happen. And you need to get across the water. So in Act 1, you're going around this area of the continent you're on, trying to figure out how to get a boat or some way to get across the water. Then in Act 2, you finally find a way across the water, except now a lot of the water has these coral reefs in it, and you can't get through them. So you have to go around them. So again, they're directing you into this part of the game. So in the beginning of the game, most every enemy you run into, you should be able to handle, with some caveats. We'll talk about gameplay later. If you learn to dodge and parry, you can handle any enemy, but you gotta be really good. And then finally, in Act 3, it opens up to the open world and you can go anywhere, and there's lots of places to go. There's a lot of side content. The main story is maybe 20 hours if you run right through it and don't do any of the side content. I think it took me about 45 hours my first time through. I have 180 hours in the game. I played through it 3 full times. The art direction, the settings, where you are, you've already seen some of it. Well, here's one of the areas / dungeons at the beginning, and then here's another one where they're underwater, but they're not underwater. I think it's called Flying Waters. So that's kind of weird looking. And here's another one, which I will pick after I finish shooting the video, and maybe one more if I don't edit this part out. But the art direction, Nicolas Maxon Francombe. Sorry, Nicolas, if I butchered your name. It's just a surrealistic It's an amazing world. Amazing, gorgeous, fantastic. And the design of the people and their faces. Speaking of the people, the voice cast. They've got Andy Serkis, and he's just doing the voice. He didn't do the mocap for his character. Somebody else did the mocap, which is like a reversal for Andy Serkis. Gollum was his most famous character, and he did that all by mocap. And then he was Caesar in the Planet of the Apes movies, and that was all mocap. Well, in this one, he's just a voice actor. And by the way, Andy Serkis has a very good voice. He's really good at this. And Charlie Cox plays Gustav, who you've seen already. Charlie Cox was Daredevil, or is Daredevil, because they're still making that. And then Jennifer English is Mael, who you've seen. She was Shadowheart in Baldur's Gate 3. If you're a gamer, you probably know her voice. And then Ben Starr, who was Clive Rossfield in Final Fantasy XVI. But the acting is incredible. Not only the voice, but the mocap. I will link to a video below of behind the scenes. Don't watch any of these videos I'm linking to below until you've played the game. Unless you're never going to play the game. In which case, I feel bad for you because it's a fantastic game. There's a scene they're shooting with the mocap actors. And the mocap actors are crying. The mocap actors were crying. And then when you hear the voice actors, you can tell they're obviously crying too. There's a lot of crying in this, including this guy. I cried at least 3 times, maybe more. I'll admit to 3. And the whole interactions are very realistic. The characters speak over each other. Here's an example.
You know, I'm sorry that... I miss
you don't need to... Okay.
You go.
No, you.
And they make faces. These people
Seems
are
empty.
so real that like they
Let's
roll
go.
their eyes and they make faces and they scream at each other and it's just... Mwah. C'est bon. Now, the gameplay. This is what separates the men from the boys, or the girls from the women. I don't know. What phrase can you use for that? It's like other games you've played, other dungeon crawlers and RPGs. As you level up, you get attribute points that you get to assign, but they go into these categories that affect multiple stats sometimes, or not sometimes. So you put these attribute points in and you build your stats, and if you notice on the screen there's a little sword next to some of the attributes. Those are tied to your weapon. Usually putting your points in them will make multiple stats better. But then, for abilities, you get pictos, which are these drawings that they paint onto their skin, and some of the thing you can actually see them on people's skin. And you get to equip 3 of these, and they each give you stats, but they also have passives, passive effects. My personal favorite passive effect, gain 1 action point on a perfect dodge. Now, I don't do many perfect dodges, but I sure like being rewarded for it. And it's a passive, so you can install it on all your characters once the picto is learned. You have to fight 4 battles with a picto on to learn it, and then you can share it with the rest of the team. But the Lumina just equip the passive function. You don't get the stats, you just get the passive thing at the bottom. It is turn-based combat. Don't leave on me yet. It gets better. To make it more fun, each playable character has a different gimmick, so that you have to make the builds around their gimmicks. You have to plan your battle strategies around their gimmicks because their gimmicks make them very powerful. Gustav, his is called Overcharge, and he builds up an overcharge gauge, and then he can launch this devastating attack that usually will break and stun the enemy, and once they're stunned, you can just beat the crap out of them. Mael, who we also meet in the prologue and is part of the tutorial, she has stances. She's a fencer, so she will go into offensive stance where she has more power, or defensive stance where she has more defense, or the best one ever, virtuose stance where she deals 200% damage. Oh God, do you want to be in virtuose stance? Then there's other characters whose names I will not mention, spoilers, but one of them, when they cast skills, they create elemental stains, and as they build up these stains, it makes other skills more powerful. But then you have to plan, well, which stains do I put on? Because that'll affect what the next skill I use based on what stains I have already applied. Then you got a crazy one where it's sun and moon phases, and then if you get a sun charge and a moon charge, you go into twilight, where again, you deal like double damage. One character, it's all based on perfection. As he builds up hits and attacks, his perfection rises, and when he gets to S level, then he does double damage. But if he gets hit, it drops back down and you have to build it back up. So you're constantly working on perfection. Although you might find weapons that will help you with this. And then there's one that's so crazy that I'm not going to describe it to you in any way because you just have to experience it when you get to that character. For those of you who are old-time RPG guys, everyone says he's the blue mage. In battle, all characters have a gun for some reason, and they can do free aim shots, so you can fire at your enemies, some of whom have weak points, and the gun is the only way to hit the weak points. So you use the gun to hit their weak points, which generally causes them extra damage or makes them lose one of their attacks. Then you have skills that cost action points, as do free aim shots. They both, free aim shots and skills cost action points. Attacks, base attacks, build action points. So if you run out of action points, you attack and then they go back up, and then you have some to use a skill the next time. If you survive, we'll get to that. Now, skills also have what they call quick time events, QTEs, where you have to press the buttons right at the right time and then you build additional damage. You all know me. I suck at button pushing. I can never get the timings right. Not to worry, under accessibility, there's an option to automatically do those for you. So my little quick time events, they're always perfect because I ain't doing them, the game's doing them. Thank God for accessibility for us old people. When the enemy takes their turn, that's where the dodge and parry comes in. And that's when, oh my God. It's like Dark Souls. Basically, you fight an enemy and they kill you until you learn their moves. And once you've learned their moves, and by the way, you practice with dodging because the dodge window is fairly wide. And so you start by dodging their attacks. And then when you're getting a perfect dodge every time, it says the word perfect on the screen. If you get a perfect dodge every time, well, the perfect dodge and the parry are the exact same timing. So if you've gotten perfect dodges, you can parry. Yeah, I don't get enough perfect dodges in a row. Although, in fact, I'll put up a screen. I do parry sometimes, not often. Well, actually, I parry sometimes because I play in story mode. I've mentioned this before. I'm old, I'm slow. I play in story mode. The enemies have less health, and the dodge and parry window is much wider, much more forgiving. Now, the good news is if you want to play in expert mode, the only difference between normal and expert is enemy health. The dodge and parry windows are identical. I'll link to a video where one of the developers says that. I think Guillaume, the head guy. He says the dodge and parry windows for normal and expert are identical. Now, you'll have to do it a lot more because the enemies will have much more health. In Act 2, they add gradient attacks and gradient parries and gradient counterattacks. And these are way more powerful, way harder to do. Different buttons you have to learn. So the combat system evolves over the game. It gets harder and harder. There's more buttons you have to be keeping track of. There's more skills you have to be keeping track of. Because you only start with 2 for most of your characters, but you end up with 6 slots, and there's like dozens of skills you can have, so you can make your own builds. I have a build where one of my characters is basically a gunner. He just does the free aim shots, just bang, 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 bang. Because there are pictos that every time, he has a 20% chance of getting more AP if he does a critical hit, and I've got him where he's like 100% critical, so he's doing a lot of critical hits, so I can make his AP go up and down as I'm going bang, 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 bang. They call that machine gun builds. For those of us who aren't good at dodging and parrying, that's how you do it. You make yourself so powerful that you kill the enemies before they get a chance to take a turn. And there's all sorts of pictos that'll help you do that. That'll let you play twice in a row, that'll let you come back from the dead. You can build amazing characters. And there's a shield mechanic. You can put on shields, and each shield you have on will block 1 hit. So you can have, I think, up to 9 shields. I didn't get good, as they say, but I got okay. Let me give you my review. I love this game. I've already said that. I have played through 3 times. So I played through once, the first time, and I got to the end, and I was so excited that I was at the end, that I beat the game, that I immediately went to New Game Plus. Bad move. This game, when you go to New Game Plus, it doesn't do a clear save file. It converts your save into a New Game Plus file. So basically, once you say New Game Plus, you can't go back to that save. You can't go back to before the boss and play more stuff. Well, those expedition journals, there's lots of them. And I had found most of them, but not all of them. But once I went to New Game Plus, they're all gone. I had to play more on New Game Plus because I had to go do things I hadn't done the first time through because I didn't have all the journals, and they're all over the world. There's super bosses out in the world. It's amazing things out in the world. Now, my other review of the game is parrying is hard. It takes a lot of practice. If you can get the perfect dodges every time, well, then you're going to be able to parry. And even I got to where I could parry sometimes. Or dodge. I mainly concentrated on dodging because, again, playing in story mode, much wider window than the parry. So I would dodge, and even then I died a lot. Till towards the end when you get so powerful that you can kill them before they go. If I'd been in normal mode, I probably couldn't have killed them before they had a turn, and so I still would have died. My strategy was shields, dodging, and getting so strong the enemy doesn't get a turn. I probably shouldn't tell you that. When you're in dungeons and stuff, there's lots of paths, lots of ways you can go. There's usually one path that has like lights along it. There are street lamps or lanterns on the ground or candles, some kind of lighting. That's the story path. The other paths are where the good loot is. So whenever you get to a dungeon area or a new area, don't follow the lights. Go every other way first. And that's where you'll find all the cool pictos that do all the cool stuff, like let you have a second turn or come back from the dead and play immediately. And there's all sorts of there's hundreds and hundreds of them. That's my other big tip. Every merchant you see, buy all their lumina. They don't have very much. It's not very expensive, but it's really hard to come by. By the end of the game, most of my characters had like 500 lumina. And I mean, it was hard gathering that stuff. I think it's the best game I've ever played. It's certainly the most interesting. It's certainly the one where I had the least idea of what was going to happen. Because every time I thought I was figuring stuff out, they throw you a curveball. The story is incredible. Well, it was this writer's dream was part of it. They took like 3 disparate things and melded it together and made it into this amazing story that just gets more and more complicated. If you watch any Let's Plays, and again, I advise you not watch anybody playing this until you played it. If you watch Let's Plays, you'll see people going, wait, what? What do they mean? Who's that? Yeah, they'll mention someone by name, and you go, who's that? And then that name doesn't come up again. Who was she? Why did they mention her name? What's going on? Eventually you'll find out. And the thing about the New Game Plus playthrough, when you go through the second time, there's a whole lot of dialogue, the NPCs and the characters, where they said things that you didn't pick up at the time, but when you're playing back through knowing the story, you go, oh, she's talking about that thing she didn't confess until Act 3, and she tells you about it in Act 1. I mean, that kind of stuff. But you didn't know what it was she was talking about. But then the second time through, you know. I mentioned 3 playthroughs. For this video, I had to go capture gameplay, and I couldn't have my characters all be level 99 and have infinite pictos and all this stuff, because that wouldn't be interesting. So I had to start the game over. So I played the game from the beginning through the prologue and through Act 1 and into Act 2 just to grab captures for this video. By the way, there are nothing you have seen is after Act 1, and most of it's all in the prologue. So you don't have to worry about spoilers. I have carefully kept spoilers out of here. Actually, I haven't even told you who the main villain is and what's going on with the number 33. I think it'd be better if you find that out at the very beginning in the prologue. They kind of explain that. But I want you to experience it for yourself. I want you to know what it's like, because it's so good. But it's not going to be that great if you know what's going to happen. Don't get yourself spoiled. Don't watch other people's videos. Just go buy the game. It's $50. $50. Yes, it's an indie game, but it looks as good as any AAA game that they sell for $80 for $50, and it's on sale, and it's on Game Pass. If you have an Xbox, you don't have to buy it at all. You can just play it if you have a Game Pass. I didn't mention this before. This game kind of came out of nowhere. There were some trailers, and people kind of knew about it, but it didn't have a lot of buzz. They sold 500,000 copies the first day. They sold 1 million copies in the first 3 days. By the end of May, they had sold 3.3 million. They love the number 33. Here's a little Easter egg you can look for. Somewhere in this game, there's a date, and the date is the 33rd of the month, because 33. So that's my review of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Phenomenal game. Phenomenal art direction. The music, you've heard some of the music. I usually don't do music in my videos because the music holder will sometimes come and take all your money from your video. If they come and take all the money from this video for that music, they earned that money. They deserve that money. So I don't care if I don't make any money on this video. They can have it. Just don't give me a strike. It's so good. The music is so good. Again, a guy who had never scored a video game, and he did like 40 hours of music. I think the soundtrack is 8 hours. If you don't speak French, you can go find the music videos from this game and just listen to the music. The lyrics are all in French, so you won't know what's going on, so you can listen to the music. There won't be spoilers if you don't understand French. There may not be spoilers if you do understand. Do a search on YouTube, Clair Obscur Music, and just look at the music videos and listen to the music, and you'll want to play the game. I could stand here and talk for another hour about how much I love this game, but you probably want to go start playing it. So run by it, start playing it. You're gonna love it. If you don't love it, well then unsubscribe. Actually, most of you are not subscribed anyway. So if you do love it, come back and subscribe because I'll point out other games like this in the future. That's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time. Bye-bye. I don't know what next week's video is gonna be. It's summer. Thanks for staying to the end. Bye-bye.